Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is a continuation on various topics, 11/14/2022, which is November 14th, 2022, the year of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai turning up. And also I added Habakkuk 3 and 4 at the end because when I was going through that lesson, at the end of the lesson, almost at around the 56, 57 minute mark, I was going into Habakkuk 3 and I wanted to make another point, but I had to stop the video that particular day. So, here now, Lord's will, we can get through, that point. And when we go to the word sorcery, what's the sorcery meaning? And the reason why we're touching on this is because Habakkuk 3 and 4 speaks about sorcery. We're going to get into a little bit of that, Lord's will. It said, what does sorcery mean? Sorcery is supernatural power or ability to use supernatural powers, witchcraft, or magic. The word sorcery often, though not always, refers to so-called black magic used for evil purposes. And pretty much that's what they do. They paint it in a good light, because they throw a little Jesus and Christianity here and there, and then all of a sudden it gives it a different meaning. But it's nothing more than sorcery and witchcraft. And in this society, they paint, witchcraft as being a good thing, because they don't use the word witchcraft. And when you check out these witches, when you get a chance, go listen to the John Todd Confessions. You should be able to find them on YouTube. And pretty much what witches do, they cast spells. They do all different types, witches and warlocks. They do all different types of incantations and, casting spells on people. And a lot of times what they do is they use drugs, because the drugs enhance the ability, and allow the demons to help them officiate that business better. That's why drug use, and witchcraft, sorcery, all that go hand in hand. So when we go to Nahum 3 and 4, it says, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot. Now, when we spoke about this last time, we spoke about, Nineveh that actually went down. But these prophecies today apply to America because America is following in the same footsteps and even on a heavier scale. All right. And what is a harlot? A harlot is a woman that sells her body for prostitution. Everybody lays down with. America is also comparable to a prostitute. Lord's will, we can get to that precept in a minute. But let's look up the word well-favored. Well-favored. The word is tawab, which the word tawab simply means good. All right, pleasant, agreeable. Okay, so well-favored. All right, so the mistress of witchcraft, because when you look up the word mistress is nothing more than the female way of saying master. Okay, a mistress, like you have a madam. You go to a brothel, you have the madam, which is nothing more than a glorified prostitute, a very experienced prostitute. That's all she is. But the word mistress simply means master. And when we look up the word in the Hebrew is Ba'ailah, with the ha at the end makes it feminine, because Ba'al is Lord or husband. Ba'ailah is because it's the master, and the aha at the end makes it feminine. So Ba'ailah is mistress, which is the feminine way of saying master. All right, mistress, female owner, sorcerers, necromancers, noun of relationship, right? Because they are the ones that introduce, the so-called Johns, as they used to call them back in the 70s, to the rest of the flock, so to speak. The rest of the stall, or however you say it, dealing with the rest of the women that are selling their body. And that is America, because America is the mistress, above all these other nations. She took all of those different deities and sorceries from all different nations and incorporated them all into one. It says that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcraft. All right. So what I wanted to do is I had looked this up, in the style of Elder Apostle Tar. And this is the same scripture, Nahum 3 and 4, because of the multitudes of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft, that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. I wanted to just go to the Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges and read a couple of these points here and get a couple of other points, because it makes a lot of good points. All right. Okay, so here it says multitude of whoredoms. The phrase whoredom, when used of Israel, meant first infidelity to Yahweh, power of Israel. They have Jehovah there, but his name is Yahweh, by serving other gods. And pretty much that is the spiritual sense of a harlot or whoredom. It's laying down with foreign gods. In the case of the word whoredom in the scriptures, when it applies to man, a whoredom, is you have whoredom, which is, women, pretty much it's adultery, women laying down with more than one man, and you have the word whoremonger, which the word whoremonger is a seller of prostitutes. It doesn't mean that you lay down with a million women that makes you a whoremonger. As long as those women are not married to anybody else, you good. We don't say that you should do that, because in these times we're living in, you never know. And plus, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources to do that, but to each his own. It says, then it was applied to alliances and political intercourse with other nations. See? And this is what Esau has done through America, Babylon the Great. It is applied with alliances, which is unions, and political intercourse, which is what they do. They have agreements among each other, and nations allow America to, infect their way of life by the, status quo or the political ideas and agendas of America. Political intercourse with other nations, and that's pretty much what the spiritual sense of a harlot is. Partly because such trust is in other nations betrayed the distrust of the Most High and falsehood to him, right? And America claims to be a nation that's so-called built upon Christianity. So if that's the case, you're saying indirectly to the world that you are, or directly to the world that you are so-called Christians, you are the Most High's people, or you uphold the ways of the Most High. But when you look at their actions and you compare it to what's written in the scriptures, it doesn't match. It says, and partly because the political influence of powerful states like Assyria and Babylon was naturally followed by an invasion of their customs and religious ideas. And this is what happens. What they're doing is they're following the customs and religious ideas of America. So much so that they become like America. They're spiritually clothed like America. So they don't act like themselves. This is why a lot of those politicians in these different countries don't wear the garb of their ancestors. They wear the garbs of America. This is why you have two-piece suits, three-piece suits with shirt and tie. You got shoes. So they're dressed like Esau, although they represent their nation, unless they're like in certain countries, they make them dress in battle fatigues, to paint a picture, to act like, because pretty much they're nothing but characters. But when you look at their, ideals and the things that they are following in their curriculum in their nation, it all goes back to things that are done here in America. All right. So that's the multitude of whoredoms, as was seen in the decline of the kingdom of Judah, so on and so forth. So even though I got another precept here, when we go to Revelation 17:5, these are labels that are placed upon America, Babylon the Great. It says, and upon her forehead, meaning the harlot's forehead, was a name written, mystery, because this is a mystery, because for a long time, no one knew what this was speaking about. No one knew who Babylon the Great was. You had certain guesses, people would say, well, this represents that represents this, the Roman Catholic Church, so on and so forth. But eventually that mystery was revealed to the men of the Lord, beginning with, I'm not sure if Elder Abba Bivens knew America was Babylon the Great. I'm pretty sure he did, because High Priest Ariah, he brought that out. So he had to have known that America was Babylon the Great, so it says mystery, Babylon the Great, because Babylon the Great is the biggest conglomeration of confusion. You have every nation here that speaks every language, worships every religion, so this is a big melting pot of confusion, right? Then it says the mother of harlots, because you can pretty much do whatever you want here. You can worship whoever you want. And this harlot here is not talking about just an actual harlot. It's talking about the ideals, that are not relegated to just one power. It's whatever you want to do. You want to worship a rock and a gorilla, you could worship the rock and the gorilla at the same time. You want to say that when a gorilla takes a shit, that is a holy thing, and you worship that, and you have a shrine to gorilla poo, then you can do. If you like gorilla poo, you can do. And then it says, and abominations of the earth, because this place, promotes, homosexuality, lesbianism, transgender, the alphabet people thing. All right, so going back, let's jump down here to the well-favored harlot. Well-favored means beautiful. See, well-favored, beautiful. Matter of fact, let's look this word up. Let's go to Google. Well-favored, having special advantages, especially good looks. See, so good looking. Hey, good looking. You got to be from Brooklyn. So like an inside joke. Well-favored means beautiful, though the phrase has perhaps ceased to be usual in common language. See, because you have to remember that when these scriptures were written and when they were translated, this goes back to the 1600s, 1500s. So there were certain words that were used, or phrases that were used back then, that are really sort of obsolete now. This is why you have to go back to the Hebrew and the Greek in order to be able to get a better understanding of what's being said. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll be lost, because it won't make any sense now. Just like if you take a phrase from the modern times and you brought it back in time or forward in time, people won't know what you're talking about. Yo, that's fresh, man. Yo, that's dope, back dealing with the 80s. You take a phrase from today and you bring it back into the 80s, they're not going to understand what you're saying, because it's not something that was, known at that time. So these things from back then have certain phrases and words and definitions have ceased to be usual in the common language. It says in the northern dialect, well fart then. Just cracking, Salakia. Will fart or will fart is still common for good looking, beautiful, which goes back to well favored. Well fart or will fart. I'm not sure if that's it's a northern dialect, they say. So it's still common for good looking. Beauty or charm is a point in the harlot, right? Because what is the job of a harlot? Her job is to make money. She ain't gonna make money if she looks busted. So what does she have to do? She has to get herself dolled up, perfumed up, makeup up, looking good, titties propped up, ass propped out, hips, everything. She has to advertise her assets in order for her to make that dough, right? So that's what America's doing. When you see America parading around the world, she got her titties out, her ass out, you know, and she got her perfume on, you know, alluring these nations to lay down with her. All right, the reference perhaps is less to the splendor and the riches of an imperial city, which that's all a part of it, than to the dazzling prestige of the empire. And there is a dazzling prestige to this empire of America, Babylon the Great. This is why there's a song by The Who that is called American Woman. And when you read the lyrics to it, you know, it says, let me see if I can remember. American woman, stay away from me. American woman, mama set me free. Don't come around here no more. Don't want to see your whatever face no more. Colored lights may hypnotize, sparkle someone else's eyes. Because when you look at America and the way they paint it as a golden city. You know, most people see Times Square, you know, that bright lights, you know, and all of that flashy stuff, you know. So it's a dazzling prestige of the empire. Plus, people are getting rich off of it, which fascinated weaker states and rulers, see? So it fascinated weaker states and rulers, as for an example in the case of Ahaz. And pretty much that's what the job of a harlot is, you know, to fascinate. All right, so when we go back to Revelation 17 and 6, it says, and I saw the woman, which is who? America, the harlot, drunken with the blood of the saints. Did not they kill the so-called North American Indians, Seminole Indians, so-called Mexican Indians, the Judites, so-called Negroes, and so on and so forth in this land? And she was drunken with the blood of the saints, because there is much bloodshed here. This is why this place cannot be cleansed except by fire. There's no way to, you know, exterminate, annihilate all of the ones that did wrong to our people, because that would not be sufficient, you know, to cleanse this land. It says, and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua, yeah, because you had, you know, Israelites here that were part of the elect that got caught up in this. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration, see? So why did he look at her with great admiration? Because she was well favored. She was very beautiful to look upon. You know, so he even got kind of caught up in it. This is why Yahushua said, if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. And this is why the angel in the following verse cursed him out. He said, what the hell you know getting all lured by this woman for? You know, because it's a picture that's painted, and looks like a very beautiful picture. But when you go in there, you know, inside joke, you know, it's pollution. You know, and nations are starting to find that out. That from a distance, you know, the glitter and the shine is beautiful. But not all that glitters is gold, because when they get here, they find out different. You know, a wonderful thing, a marvel, wonder, to wonder with great wonder, exceedingly, right? He was smitten, you know, by the beauty of this woman. And that was the alluring factor, you know, of the well-favored harlot, which goes hand in hand with Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 4. Then it goes on to say, mistress of witchcrafts, an example, practiceth sorceries. It says, matter of fact, before we read this, let's go back to Revelation 17 and 1. It says, the doom of Babylon. It says, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. When you jump to the 15th verse, the many waters represents nations, tongues, and peoples, right? This is why the 5th verse speaks about Babylon the Great, a great conglomeration of confusion, because the word Babylon goes back to the Hebrew word Babal, you know, or the English word Babel, you know, which means confusion. And when you get that many people with that many different languages and that many different, you know, religious beliefs and ideologies and customs, there's nothing but a bunch of confusion. right? It says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. This is spiritual fornication. All nations of the earth have been partakers with America, especially their leaders. And their leaders, once they get that Babylonian juice, they give it to the rest of the people of their nation. And the inhabitants of the earth, all the whole earth, entire earth, have been made drunk with the wine of a fornication. This is why you have democracy in every, in all these different countries that America goes into, and they give them money, so-called, because they funnel that money back out just to get their resources. But if you look at the majority of the world, everyone is under the influence of America. This is why all over the planet, you can go anywhere on the planet pretty much, and you'll see a McDonald's, you'll see different fashions of America. Everyone's rapping around the world. You have you would never even think you were in another country, except for when the people start speaking, because it's fashioned the same way as America. So it says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw the woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. The scarlet-colored beast is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, which is Esau's whole beast system, full of names of blasphemy. Yeah, because they call themselves, the Most High, Yahushai, so on and so forth. Christians having 7 heads and 10 horns is the same story told over and over again in different parts of Revelation, just in different ways. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, right? Because the woman being arrayed in purple and scarlet color is that so-called prestige, And when America was established, it was established in that fashion. Pretty much you could say the Statue of Liberty, which was supposed to be a man in drag, and they say a woman. It's all kind of madness coming with it. When they first established it, they wanted to paint it purple and red, but what happened was the waters out there and the salt and the oxidation would have destroyed the paint, so they decided to leave it, I believe it was copper, if I'm not mistaken. That's why it looks green, so they didn't, and they actually wanted to put a cup in the hand first, but then they ended up changing it to a light, to so-called, usher in the ships coming in. And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup and a handful of abominations and filthiness of a fornication. Right, and this is what everyone on the planet is drinking, that Babylonian juice. All right, beginning with their democracy and just their way of being. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. All right, so going back, now here the mistress of witchcrafts is an example, that practiceth sorceries. And we looked up the definition for sorcery. What the sorcery means? Sorcery is supernatural power or the ability to use supernatural power, witchcraft, or magic. The word sorcery often, though not always, refers to so-called black magic, magic used for evil purposes. And magic, no matter what form it comes in, is wicked, evil. All right, because some people might say, well, what about miracles? Well, miracles are not magic. Miracles are miracles. Magic is magic. There's a distinction. Then it goes on to say, reference is to the arts of statecraft, the influences used upon the nations, right? And that's what happens. There's influences from America that are followed by these nations. Whose influences are the nations following? Because if you go around the world, you're going to see that these nations are built up like America. They're following America's customs. They're not following the customs of the Chinese. They're not following the customs of the Japanese. They're not following, for the most part, the custom of these different nations. Those nations around the world are following the customs of America. They're being influenced by what they see here. So when they go back to their country, they want to still be American. It says, which act on them like the charms and incantations and drugs of the sorcerers, right? Because charms, you have amulets, incantations, which are different sayings, which usually these are spells that are put on people or nations or whatever the case may be, and they usually do them in Latin. And then it says, and drugs of the sorceress, right? Because America is that feminine sorcerer or witch, which is a feminine warlock, right? So we're dealing with the word drugs. Matter of fact, before we do that, okay, they don't have that here. Okay, so let's go to Revelation 18. It says, and the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee. This is after the destruction of America. These are things that are not going to be done here anymore. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride, right, shall be heard no more at all in thee. No more marriages, whether, opposite sex or same sex. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, which is dealing with these nations, these rulers. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. See, because she was a well-favored harlot. She was looked at with admiration. Her influence stemmed throughout the four corners of the earth. Everyone was drunk off of that wine. But then when they come off of that drunken state, they were pissed off. The nations have drunken her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Now, an interesting thing is when you look up this word sorceries, right? And another scripture just came to mind. Just bear with me 1 second. I don't think I'm going to need this anymore. Let me see. Is this it? Might be it. Okay, 22. Okay, so going back, the word there for sorceries is what? Pharmakia. Pharmakia, which sounds like what? Pharmacy, because that's exactly what it is. And then it goes back to the word pharmakeos, sorcerer. It says the use of the administering of drugs, right? This is dealing with, when they do these witchcraft, spells, incantations, they're usually all drugged up. Then also another thing is they have the nation drugged up on these statin drugs. So in all levels they're pushing, the use of drugs to pretty much alter the mind state of people. Not so much for them to get high so much, but in order for them to be more docile, to be more in a calm state, more in a altered state of mind, so that they can be more easily manipulated. This is why when you watch movies like Equilibrium and other movies, in the future, they show you people administering drugs to themselves to keep them in an apathetic mindset, which the word apathy basically means, no feelings. Is no or not, and path is where you get the word feeling, no feelings. Apathy, no feelings. Sympathy, you have feelings. So the use of administering of drugs, poisoning, because them drugs do poison you. Sorcery, magical arts often found in connection with idolatry and fostered by it, right? Because it all goes back to idolatry. Metaphorically, the deceptions and seductions of idolatry, and that's pretty much what it is. Now, interesting thing is when you go to the book of Exodus 22:18, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, and you go to the word witch, when you go to the Hebrew, it's the word kashap, right? To practice witchcraft or sorcery, use witchcraft, sorcerer, sorceress, and that's all it says, right? To whisper a spell, yeah, because it's all about, incantations, putting spells on people. An example, to enchant or practice magic. Now, when you go back, it should say it here. When you go here to the Greek, it has the word there, pharmakous, for witch. Pharmakous, which is the word witchcraft or pharmacy. All right? Which is the administration of drugs. And if you know anything about these different, witchcraft gatherings, for lack of better words, it's heavily influenced by drugs, Let me see, pharmakos. Let's see if it break it down here. That goes into scapegoat, criminal, worthless fellow. All right, it doesn't really go too deep into it. Pharmakia. Let me see what this says real quick. They're just giving you scriptures in Spanish. Which one of them is, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Let me see what else we could find. Right here, Pharmakia Wiktionary. It says etymology, pharmakio, to use drugs. Because we had this witch come up to us in New Haven, Connecticut, down the street from Yale University. And our elder pastor was speaking at the time, and he came up to him and he mentioned, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. And the pastor said, yeah, the word there is pharmakia. And he said, pastor told him, yeah, that means the use of drugs. He said, no, I don't mean that. He tried to weasel his way out of it, but Apostle Tar had him cornered. They used to send all kind of devils over there. So to use drugs, you see it for yourself, pharmakia. The pharmacy, the use of drugs or medicines. Sorcery, witchcraft, and if I'm not mistaken, let me see, what is the symbol for pharmacy? Symbol for pharmacy. Right, you got the RX, and then you have what here? The something in the pestle. What is that called? The something in the pestle. Let's go to images. You can see it right there, and that's for what? For the mixing of drugs. And if you notice, when you look at these witches, they get into the herbs. They know about the herbs, and this is why when you do, when you get into herbs, people equate it with witchcraft because they don't understand the duality, of the use of herbs. Because witches, that's one of the things they use. They use herbs, for healing, for spells, and you see it when they show you the witches. They have a big ass pot, the fire with water in it, and they're putting a spider leg in it, and the hair of a wombat, and all kind of crazy shit. All right, so there you have it. Mortar and pestle, that's what it's called, the mortar and pestle. All right, and this is another demonic symbol, the caduceus, which they try to go back to, Moses in the wilderness, with the children of Israel. All right, so that's it on that. So thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. That it goes into drug use, pharmacy, which that's pretty much all that America is based off of. So when you see the word sorcery in Revelation 18, it goes back to the word pharmakia, which is the use of drugs, incantations. And one last point, see if I could get through this. Nahum 3:19, there is no healing of thy bruise, thy wound is grievous. Yeah, because we would have healed Babylon. These are the same words that were used, just a different phrasing or different writing of it when it spoke about healing of Babylon, because Babylon and Nineveh are synonymous with each other when it comes to America. They both symbolize the future of America, which is known as Babylon the Great. So that wound is grievous, right? Because there's no healing. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap their hands over thee. Yeah, because the bruit of thee, the people are going to hear, those that are going to be afar off. You know, some of them that are in ships that haven't made it to the shore are going to see the destruction, but other places around the world are going to hear of it, and they're going to see it on TV. They shall hear the bruit of thee, clap their hands over thee, for upon whom has not thy wickedness passed continually. In America, Nineveh was wicked, but America is super wicked. America is wicked a billion times on steroids. And when we look up this word brute, B-R-U-I-T, right, the brute is the word shemai, which means to hear, right? It means to hear or to listen. Report, see, it's a report. Now, when we go to Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 43, it says, the king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. So this place is going to get some kind of news that's going to get, you know, whoever happens to be the president at the time is going to make him all messed up, you know. But then when the nations hear of the destruction of America, they're going to be, you know, like saddened, not because America is destroyed, because people know that this place got it coming to them, but because they're going to be, you know, sad because they're not going to be able to sell their wares here anymore. And when you read Revelation 18, it goes into that whole, you know, that whole deal, you know, of these nations getting rich through the abundance of her delicacies and her costliness. And that's how these nations were able to get rich, because they can make products in their country cheaper, and then ship them to America and sell them for exorbitant prices in comparison to what it cost them to make it. Like here in America, to the average person, that's not enough. $5, $10, you know, to the average person, that may not seem like much. But when you're making something for 2 cents, 5 cents, 50 cents, and you're making $5 and $10 off of it, that's a high margin of profit, you know? So that being the case, this is why this place is known for her costliness. And when this place goes up, all nations are going to be saddened, not because America went down and they're going to feel bad for her, but because they're not going to be able to make that money anymore. So pretty much that was the ending of that other lesson that I was doing. I wasn't able to get to this part. So Barakatah Yahweh Shemel Shai allowed me to get to it now. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.